Hello and welcome to the English News Bulletin on VTV International. I'm Hoai Leung and let's first check out the headlines for this hour. East Sea issues discussed in Washington, D.C. in the 5th annual meeting by CSIS. And the annual summer camp in Vietnam connects Vietnamese overseas youth. Now, top news for this hour. A 2-day workshop on the latest developments and measures to resolve conflicts in the East Sea has just wrapped up. The workshop was organized by the Research Center for International Policies at Japan's Meiji University. Nearly 200 delegates attended the event on Wednesday in Japan, including high-level officials and professors from Japan, the United States, Vietnam, and Chinese Taiwan. Participants analyzed the latest developments and policies of countries and territories directly and indirectly related to the conflict in the East Sea and proposed measures to ease tensions in this important maritime route. Now, the latest developments and policy options for the East Sea were also the topic of discussion at a conference held in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday. Organized by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS, the 5th annual meeting drew experts from Vietnam, China, the Philippines, Australia, and the United States, among others.
23 speakers and 300 representatives discussed the recent development in the East Sea, legal issues and strategic balance, and engaged in a crisis simulation. Participants noted that most Southeast Asian countries are concerned about China's illegal construction of artificial islands in the East Sea.
I think the neighborhood is sending messages to China to please consider the sovereignty of your neighbors. Please think about your own national security and economic welfare in the context of being a good neighbor as well as protecting your own interests.
Speaking at the conference, United States Assistant Secretary of the State for East Asia, Daniel Rochelle, stressed that China's illegal construction only caused more tension and concern in the region rather than benefiting China.
No amount of sand, no matter how high it's piled, will garner any sovereignty. These outposts don't benefit China's claims under international law.
Very engaged
Experts agreed that the greatest success of the conference was that parties has addressed these issues rather than avoiding them. This will be an important basis for finding a common solution to the current situation in the East Sea.
In economic news, the first 6 months of the year has witnessed a wave of bank merger. The mergers of PG Bank and Vietinbank, Mekong Bank and Maritime Bank, and the Southern Bank and the Sacombank are some notable examples. The restructuring of the banking system aims at improving the overall transparency and competitiveness of the sector, but concerns still remain.
SHB recently merged with Habu Bank. As a result, its 95 branches have now been expanded to more than 400. BIDV also plans to increase its branches from 600 to 1,000 following its merger with MHB.
M&As within the banking sector are taking place voluntarily. So far, they have gone very smoothly.
However, economists are not so convinced. They're raising questions as to whether M&A can resolve issues concerning the increase of transfer of bad debt from one bank to another.
If a larger bank merges with a smaller one and becomes responsible for all of its previous bad debt, sooner or later, the larger bank will be affected. If this gets out of hand, who will support the bank? It risks lowering the effectiveness of its operations.
At the moment, most banks have invested in core banking, developing specific operation procedures, customer target group, and development outlook. That begs the question, which core banking strategy will two banks adapt post-M&A? And the strategy that is left behind, would that be a waste of investment for that particular bank? Experts also pointed out possible lapses in merging staff from two banks.
A major point of concern is the work ethic of staff members, particularly those working in the credit sector. What we need to avoid is a situation where staff jump from one bank to another in a short pace of time, raising the risk in terms of management and work ethics.
The ultimate goal of restructuring banks is to establish large institutions that are competitive and long-standing. Nevertheless, economists say the quality of banking needs to be a more important factor when it comes to the recent wave of M&As. The State Bank of Vietnam is also looking to cut the number of commercial banks within the system to 20 by 2017, half the current amount.
The water hyacinth is a free-floating perennial plant. The plant used to is troublesome for other species because of its dominance in the Mekong Delta region. Now locals have found ways to utilize the water hyacinth, and the once invasive species is now a major export of the region. Let's have a look.
10 years ago, locals here had to spray herbicides to kill the dominant water hyacinths so that boats could pass. Nowadays, they actively cultivate the plant. Hyacinths provide jobs for thousands of locals. Women and children use the dried plants for weaving.
We can earn around $3.5 each day by cutting water hyacinths. Now many households here grow this type of plant. Sometimes one package can cost up to $100. Besides working in our fields, we grow water hyacinths in our free time. It's quite easy and brings us additional income.
The majority of workers in Hậu Giang are members of the Kim Ngân Cooperative. There are about 300 households that provide materials and 1,000 households involved in the weaving craft. The cooperative exports products made from water hyacinths to markets in Germany, Denmark, Japan and China.
We hold 18 knitting classes each year for people in our commune. Our cooperative wants to extend its production. We have the market to do it, but we need capital to invest in facilities and factories.
Having been able to turn what was perceived to be a weed into a major export, locals in Hậu Giang province are an example of creativity and diligence.
Exotic Vietnam is an intriguing blend of many charms. This land is where all manner of stunning landscapes await like a visual feast, rivaled only by the beauty of its people and their abundantly rich tradition and culture. Here is where you can relive the past in richest color or live it up in the bright lights of the big city. With so much more to offer, Vietnam is simply unforgettable.
You're tuning into VTV News. The Hue Central Hospital on Wednesday successfully performed the heart-lung transplant for a 40-year-old man in Hue Central City. According to Professor Dr. Bùi Đức Phú, director of the hospital, this was the first heart-lung transplant conducted in Vietnam, and the transplanted heart and lung were donated by a brain-dead donor from Ho Chi Minh City. Hue Central Hospital sent 4 doctors to Chợ Rẫy Hospital in Ho Chi Minh City to take the organs. They came back to Hue more than 3 hours later and finished the transplant in 1 hour. Organs of the donor, who died after a work accident, have been given to 5 other patients. Doctors are still monitoring the patient after the first heart-lung transplant. The blood drive known as the Red Journey ended yesterday in Hanoi after traveling through 23 provinces nationwide. The campaign has collected over 23,000 units of blood, partly thanks to the participation of 120 volunteers who were carefully selected and trained. The drive attracted volunteers from the mainland and on Lee Island, where a blood bank has been established with 30 members who are always ready to donate blood to save other people in case of emergency. A meeting will be held tomorrow at the National Convention Center here in Hanoi to officially conclude the Red Journey this year. Over the last 12 years, the Vietnam Summer Camp for Overseas Youths, organized by the State Committee for Overseas Vietnamese Affairs under the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, has contributed to connecting Vietnamese overseas youth around the world. This year's camp will cross 12 cities and provinces from north to south over 18 days. Participants of this year's camp enjoyed a cultural exchange with local youngsters in Da Nang on Thursday.
162 Vietnamese overseas youths from 21 countries and territories joined in a bamboo pole dance with their friends in Da Nang. The dance connected the young people in an exciting atmosphere. Although they come from different places, they are all Vietnamese and share the same love for their homeland.
This is the first time I've tried a bamboo pole dance. I am very happy. I've learned more about Vietnam on this trip. I visited Vietnam twice. This is where my parents were born, so I am glad to be here.
This is the first time I have been on the Vietnam Summer Camp. I think this camp is a good chance for overseas students to learn more about Vietnamese culture and history, and exchange with Vietnamese students to understand more about traditions and customs.
The program has traveled from north to south, focusing on a series of activities such as paying tribute to the ancestors and commemorating fallen martyrs. Thanks to these activities, these youngsters have seen the country's development and the deep attachment local people have for overseas Vietnamese. They will become special ambassadors and promote Vietnam's image around the world.
An art performance titled Dong Loc Immortal Sacred Land was held last night at the Dong Loc Historical Relic Site in Hà Tĩnh Province. The event was attended by state and party leaders. The Dong Loc intersection was a strategic site on the north-south supply route during the American War, handling supply trucks carrying soldiers, food, arms, and munitions. It was hit by an estimated 48,600 bombs over 240 days in 1968. The performance last night aimed to commemorate the 10 young female volunteers who were killed by a bomb while they were trying to fill in craters so the Dong Loc intersection could remain open. This is one of the many activities being held nationwide to mark the 68th War Invalids and Martyrs Day on July the 27th. And finally, before moving to a close, let's check the updated weather forecast. And that's it for this hour. Do log on to vtv4.vn or youtube.com/vtv4go for more updated news. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is VTV International.